The first one, of course, is Ned Pennington. And if you haven't seen that video, go back and find it, the one about my nemesis, Ned, and watch that video. And you'll understand. I explain in that video what an auction nemesis is. Talk about some that are still in existence today, some new ones that I found. Don't mention their name, but go watch that video and then come back to this one. The first one I'm going to mention on today's list is Bill Finley. And Bill's still around. He's still my nemesis. He still likes to buy the same things I do, and he still will pay more for them than I will, almost in every instance. And occasionally I do buy something that he wants, but I think the only reason I do, he feels sorry for me, lets me buy something once in a while. But most of the time, Bill wants it, I can't buy it. And he's a regular auction goer at Robinson Auctions to this day. He goes to a lot of cancer auctions too, and I run into him there. But I first met him at the Kenny Bland auction barn up on Ferry Station Road, and he identified himself as somebody I didn't want to see at an auction. First time I ever met him, and since then I've grown to know the guy and like the guy, and I could say lots of good things about him, but the one good thing I'll say about him, for a lot of years, or for a few years, he had a booth next to mine at an antique mall called the Red Rooster, I think. There was an antique mall out there about where, in the same general area, tornado blew it away, but is in the same general area as the White River Antique Mall's in now, and the White River Arts and Crafts and Antiques, whatever the name of it is. It's in that same area. There was a place called the Red Rooster, I think, Antique Mall, and Bill had a booth in there, and it was nice to have him as my neighbor in that booth because he bought lots of stuff out of my booth, and when he did, he moved it over in his booth and raised the price on it. And he had lots of the same kind of things I did, and his prices were always higher than mine, so he was a good neighbor to have in the booth. He's hard to buy anything at an auction, but when he put his stuff next to mine in a booth, it usually made mine look attractive to buyers because of the differential in our pricing scheme. Another guy from Kenny Bland's, his name was Andy Morrow, and Andy, he did most of his business in and around Bloomington when I first met him, but after a while he bought or leased part of a building in Leesville, Indiana, which was at the time the old Leesville grocery. There was some kind of a place like Masons or Oddfellows or some fraternity kind of a place like that in the upstairs of that building, but the downstairs was the Leesville store. Back in the old days, there was a big brick building there in Leesville, and it had an old store on the ground floor, and it went out of business. Andy bought that building or leased it, and he put an antique shop in there. And Andy liked to buy the same kind of furniture I like to buy, and he's a guy that paid more for it than I did. He liked to buy stuff and refinish it. In fact, he refinished stuff for people. And so he was one of those guys that bought the same kind of furniture I liked, and I met him at Kenny Bland's, and we became friends. And Andy was another one of those guys that I couldn't buy things that he wanted when he was around, but when I could buy stuff when he wasn't around, I could sometimes sell it to him. He'd come to me and buy things and allow me to make a profit on things that I bought because he was willing to pay more for it than I gave for it, and he didn't bother him to let me make a profit. He'd come and bought things from me, much like some of the other people that I've mentioned in the last video. Ralph Seabolt. Ralph Seabolt's another one that I met at the Kenny Bland auctions. And back in those days, his wife, Linda, Linda has since died. I don't know how old she was when she died. Too young, but a delightful lady. And Ralph is another one of those guys. He was a teacher, I think, at Bloomington North High School, and towards the end of his career there, he was the athletic director there. So I knew him in those capacities, and also I knew him as an auction goer, and he and his wife sold antiques. I think they had booths in the Bloomington Antique Mall. I know for a while they were over at Edinburgh in the 76 Mall. And I think they had a place near their home or behind their home. I think the name of that place was Blue something. Blue Barn, maybe? I think it was the Blue Barn, and they bought and sold the same kind of things that I love to buy and sell, and the same kind of things that I still like to buy and own. This place here is full of the same kind of stuff that they liked. And Linda, when she wanted something, she got it. Not only did I run into them at Kenny Bland's, but a lot of times she'd come down to the Robinson sales when he was having one in the Armory. They didn't invade Lawrence County too often. Didn't come down to all the sales that were down here, but when Roger was having a good sale of antiques in the Armory, I could count on seeing Ralph and Linda there, and I could count on them getting in my way. So another auction nemesis who I like to say became friends. I really like Ralph and enjoy seeing him and talking to him, and because of that I'm able to get over the fact that he's in my way anytime there's some kind of a piece of cherry furniture that I want or some other kind of thing that I like that he likes. Another one that I would mention from Kenny Bland's, and I knew her name at one time, but I don't know it now, probably because very seldom called her by her name. My wife nicknamed her the Princess. You'd have to ask her about that. I mean, I know why you could see why she was called the Princess, but anyway, we called her the Princess, and she liked the same kind of stuff I did, and I don't know, I think she had some kind of a little antique shop somewhere out in the country, in maybe Greene County, I'm not sure. Her husband was an attorney in Bloomington, and I could tell you his name too, but I won't. But he indulged her in anything she wanted, and he was happy to help her buy it. And when she wanted something, she just bought it. I mean, that's what it amounted to. If she wanted it, she'd start bidding on it, and I don't know how far she'd have went because I never saw her not buy anything. You couldn't see limits on her. She wanted it, she just bid till she got it, and that was that. She left with it. And if it's 3 or 4 or 5 times what you thought was retail, didn't matter. Didn't matter to her. I guess she did all right somehow. But the Princess. And the last one I want to mention, well, I want to mention one more. Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob was another one at Kenny Bland's, and I can't tell you what his name was other than I'm pretty sure it was Bob. I don't know what his last name was. And he had some kind of little second-hand store there in Bloomington or around Bloomington somewhere, and he sold stuff to IU students. He bought their stuff when they left and were sitting it out on the sidewalk and wanting nothing for it, and then he sold it back to them when they were coming back to school, and the new ones that were coming to school. He always had a stock of furniture and things that students needed, and he didn't care what it was. If he could sell it to a student and he could buy it cheap, I mean, he bought it. Well, because of that, sometimes he liked things that I could make some money on too. They weren't the kind of things that I was selling to students, but things that I could make a small profit on in an antique booth, and he got him away on that kind of stuff too. But he, in general, wasn't the kind of nemesis that some of the others were, because he was a cheap buyer. He just interrupted my flow of cheap things that I used to supplement and help pay my rent. He sometimes wanted the same thing I did and got in my way. And so Uncle Bob. And of course the last one was Larry. And I first called him the guy with all the turquoise. He had rings on every finger and a belt buckle and a string tie and all kinds of stuff like that that were made out of turquoise or turquoise jewelry. And if you go to auctions and did then and did recently at Roger Robinson's, you know I'm talking about Larry Johnson. And Larry Johnson passed last year. So he's gone now, but I first encountered him at Kenny Bland's, and he was another one of those guys that when he wanted it, he just bought it. He didn't, I mean, he had limits, but his limits were always way more than mine, and Larry bought lots of stuff. I think Robinsons, since Larry died, have tried to help his wife get rid of his accumulation of things that he bought over the years, and they've had at least 4, maybe 5 large sales. This just last week, the New Year's Day sale was another Larry Johnson auction where they were selling things that Larry had accumulated over the years. And I don't know whether that was the last one or not. There may be another one yet coming, but Larry was a long-time auction goer, bought and sold things for years and years and years. I first met him at Kenny Bland's in the 1980s, and another person that I became more and more familiar with over time, and was just a heck of a nice guy, and would help you with anything, and didn't care to get in your way at an auction though. If he wanted it, you're going to have to contend with him if you wanted it too. Larry Johnson. There were many others. A lot of them were most recently associated with Westbury Antique Mall in Bloomington. Most of the people there at Westbury that were longtime booth operators in and around the Bloomington area back in the day went to Kenny Bland's, and I could name some of them. I couldn't name all of them, but I do recognize them when I see them, and most of them fine people too. It's just in this business, you don't make enemies, you make friends. And when I call these people my nemesis, I don't mean they were my enemies or we disliked one another. I just mean we liked the same kind of things and got in one another's way at auctions. Some of them might consider me a nemesis as well, but more often than not, I think they just would think of me as a mosquito or a gnat or some kind of nuisance that they could just swat away. Maybe they could have bought something cheaper if I was there, but probably not. They knew I was going to like the same kind of things they did, but they didn't worry about me buying it instead of them. At least not these ones that I've mentioned by name. I think I'm going to wrap this video up right here, and don't know whether I'll go on with more Nemesis after this or not. Probably not. That's enough of this one subject, but it just gave me a chance to have some old memories and talk about some people, some of them that aren't with us anymore. Think of them and times at auctions when we interfaced with one another, the things that auction goers do. I'm a hard times guy. Till the next time, you have a good day.